And what is going on, Bruin Nation, LAFB fam? It's another episode of the Bruin Bites, and the man to my right, of course, needs no introduction. You know him, you love him, UCLA legend and the Silver Fox, and a great friend of the LA Football Network, the one, the only Mr. Wayne Cook. Wayne, so great to see you as always, and so excited about tonight.
Wow, Jamal, this is like it's funny, but UCLA has it's. I love it when we're in the media, and I don't care. There's going to be positive and negative takes, but what I want to start, and I know you haven't even asked me a question yet. Deshaun Foster is taking swings, man. He is absolutely, from the coaching staff hires, the changes that he's made before the Iamaleava news, squared by or times two or whatever you want to call it now, because we're getting recent news right before we recorded this. But this is a program that I think most outsiders have just thought doesn't really care about football, which is a lie, by the way, and it always has been. But Deshaun Foster is not going to sit back. He really wants UCLA to not only be relevant, but to be competing at the highest level, and he's not going to sit back and wait. He started making changes right away. And I don't know about you, but as a Bruin fan, I would much rather have that. And don't forget, even with all the nonsense going on, this is a 5-star quarterback coming out of Southern California. And I always laugh. When players go one direction, it's always like, oh, there goes the schools in California. They just can't keep the players home. And then they go, oh, they're so great. I can't believe you've let them get away. But when they come back, the comments are, oh, he's not that good. Everybody can go stick it. He's still an unbelievably talented player who played in the playoffs last year. They lost to the team that went on to win the national championship. Was he perfect as a freshman? Absolutely not. Got a long way to go. But I will tell you this, as a person that watches quarterbacks a lot, the talent is off the charts, and that's what we should be excited about. And if he's coached up right, I'm telling you, big things are ahead.
Well, big things are ahead indeed, Wayne. My goodness, the last few days in UCLA football feels like one of those 90s soap operas, Wayne, that sort of go on during the day, like As the World Turns or The Bold and the Beautiful, because so much has happened. And just to sort of recap, Wayne, and I know our audience is going to be on the edge of their seat to kind of get your thoughts on a number of vantage points. What does this mean for UCLA in 2025? What does this mean for UCLA beyond that? How you feel kind of the state of college football is now with these things becoming more and more norm. So we can take it every which direction, and I'm sure we will. But Wayne, just if we go back 5 days, I mean, we're talking about Nico AND really entrenched in Tennessee. Tennessee's about to start the meat of their spring practice schedule. There's a holdout now for a variety of reasons. It looked like maybe it was his agent, his father, his camp. Some believe that it was sanctioned. Some believe it was sort of the agent went rogue, but there was a renegotiation of trying to get Iamaleava a $4 billion per year type of deal, as the reports were more in line with what Quinn Ewers was getting before he went to the NFL draft, what Carson Beck was potentially getting from Miami after that transfer to Georgia. Those things fell apart. Iamaleava, open market, he becomes a Bruin. And now, just 20 minutes before we're recording, why get only one Iamaleava when you can get two? His brother Madden now joins Nico to potentially create a succession of Iamaleava quarterbacks. And this potentially could be the Ball brothers. Wayne, just on the football side here is the way this is sort of headed. But two incredibly talented players that are now donning the powder blue and gold. What this also means moving forward, Joey Aguilar entered the portal. Joey Aguilar now, Wayne, is joining Tennessee in essentially what was a trade in sort of, pro football type of contexts. And then we also heard that Robert McDaniel the decorated 4-star recruit, is entering the transfer portal. So a lot of takes, a lot of puts, but 2 takes, 2 puts. We get 2 Iamaleavas. We lose Joey Aguilar. We lose Robert McDaniel. Holy cow, UCLA has been in the national news for the last 5 days consecutively. Everybody seems to have an opinion, but it's just so great to see UCLA really front and center in terms of the college football landscape. Wayne, your thoughts on it all? I will cede the floor to you, and really can't wait.
Well, first of all, you have to play under the rules that exist right now. So when you ask me what I think it's complete nonsense, and I hate what's happening in college football right now. And I only say that because you can come to a school, and because of the way the current system works, I mean, you might be there for a week, but for 2 weeks. I mean, people can just keep moving whenever they want to. That part of it is insanity to me. They're going to have to reel in how I just have this image of in 3-4 years from now, they're going to be offering a sophomore in high school $6 million to come to a school before they played it down in football. The reason why I like bringing in players that have already played before is we went through this a few years ago when Dante Moore was at UCLA. I never said once that I didn't think Dante Moore wasn't going to be a good quarterback. I just didn't think he was ready to play yet.
Yeah.
We saw that with Dylan Raiola's up and down this year. We've seen that we saw that with Nico at Tennessee. He had some games where he wasn't as sharp. And what people don't realize is you can go all the way back to players like Joe Burrow. How good was he his senior year? Michael Penix, how good was he his senior year? Bo Nix, how good was he his senior year? Jaden Daniels, how good was he his senior year? Like, people are like, well, these freshmen come in with 5 stars next to him, and I'm going to tell people, so what? What are you going to be when you get to be a junior and senior? Even Caleb Williams remember, he was at Oklahoma first.
Right.
This is more similar to that situation. Now we've got Nico coming over because if you remember, when Caleb Williams was at Oklahoma, he went through some of those growing pains. People weren't sure. I've been spending a lot of time the last 2 days watching Nico, and I'm blown away with his feet, with his base, with the way he moves, with his arm strength. He does make mistakes, though. He's not always as accurate as he should be. Sometimes his receivers sometimes he throws a flat, deep ball where he misses. Guys watch Alabama game, watch the Florida game, and there's guys wide open, and he's not hitting them. He's got all this raw, natural talent, but sometimes he almost waits for guys to come over. To come open, and then he tries to throw with the big arm. That's young quarterback stuff, though. I'm looking at, God, he's got good feet. Wow, he carries out his fakes. Wow, he does a lot of stuff that tells you that he's been coached. Now he's just got to learn the speed of the game, how to use his eyes. Sometimes he locks in on people, and he still had great stats. He still threw for over 2,600 yards and was 19-5 touchdown to interception ratio. But you do see some of these moments in some of the bigger games where you're like, he looks extraordinary, and then he makes kind of a young quarterback thing. But from my standpoint, who cares?
Right.
That's why you bring in Tino Sinceri to coach him up. I guarantee you this is all part of the equation. Like, when you have a good coach and a good coaching staff, you bring in a quarterback who's going to have to learn the system pretty darn fast, right? It's not going to get spring. First thing I looked at is when did the spring quarter start? And it was too late. Okay, so it's got to be summer. Okay, and then all fall. But it just his natural skill set is fantastic. So there, and then you've got brother, and I started doing the math, and I'm like, so if he redshirts, because remember he was coming to UCLA,
right.
Madden was, then last second goes to Arkansas, and now is coming back. So he comes in with Nico maybe having sophomore next year, junior year, and then who knows if he ends up being as good as advertised. If he lives up to the 5-star ability, may leave. And then you've got Madden who redshirts. And by the way, I am not anointing anybody.
Right.
I still believe you have to win the starting job. I'm going to go ahead and take a guess that Nico's going to be the starting quarterback next year. I don't think that's not going to happen. But you still have to compete, and there's still, the one thing we've learned about football, every single school out there, if they think they have a shot at getting someone better, They're gonna do it sometimes. So who knows what's gonna happen in the modern era? But I think it's exciting. I think this should help, even though there's some negative press. I mean, let's be honest. As soon as you hear about a player holding out who's already getting paid ridiculously well and wants way more, and by the way, I'm going to remind everybody of this. It's just like everything in the world right now. Just because you see it on the internet, just because you hear it on TV, just because people like me and you go on a podcast, and I had to listen to Clay Travis just completely bash UCLA today, and I totally didn't agree with it. It's not like Tennessee's been a juggernaut for the last 20, 30 years in football. But the idea is that everybody's got an opinion. Everybody thinks they know the story. And I always think there's probably some stuff that we don't know. I've heard many people, Kirk Herbstreit came out and said when he met Nico, he couldn't have been more impressed. He said one of the nicest young men you'll ever want to meet. When I watch him play, he plays like he wants to win. He plays like he cares when he makes mistakes. He plays an aggressive style of football. And again, remember, players get better as they get older. The great Homer Smith told me once, and I didn't agree with him, but he told me this once. He goes, if I had my way, the starting quarterback in my system would be a senior every year.
Wow.
Because he felt like it took that long to really master what he was trying to teach us. That's obviously not realistic at all. But to be honest with you, I just gave examples of all the upperclassmen quarterback that have been dominating college football. And it's for a reason. It's a hard game. It takes a while to get good at it.
No, it makes sense, Wayne. It really well said there. Wayne, let me sort of double click a little bit on the fit with Nico AND skill set and the Tino Sunseri system. Is there something, given what we've seen from Sunseri over the years, particularly last year with Indiana and Curtis O'Rourke, in terms of kind of pre-snap strategy, in terms of how quickly the ball gets out, in terms of personnel packages, that you're really excited about, given Nico's unique skill set in the film that you saw, kind of part A? And then part B, any concerns you have in terms of Nico not being part of the spring practice ecosystem of UCLA? Do you feel like there's enough time to be able to really kind of master this offense? Or do we, as fans, need to almost think of the season as a bit in phases? It's going to take them 3 or 4 games, and then you're going to see the real Nico. So maybe one thing you're really excited about and one thing that's still kind of a watch out in the back of your mind.
I think one thing that you can do with an athletic quarterback is you don't have to be as complicated. He's 6'5", 6'6". He's probably going to get a little bit bigger than he was last year before next year. He's pretty skinny, but he's going to get bigger. He moves really well. One of the things I've been most impressed with when I watch film is him on the move, throwing on the run. I think he does a good job if you can move the pocket. I think I was just talking to the great Matt Stevens right before I came on here, and we were talking about the concepts that I think Sunseri is going to make things as simple as possible. And I think his football IQ is going to get better and better and better. To answer your question first, I am concerned. I'm concerned that there's no spring. I do worry about trying to learn an offense, especially if it's new language. And I don't know the similarities to the language that Tennessee used and what UCLA used. I have no idea. But sometimes learning the new language, learning the playbook, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as complicated as what was going on with Bieniemy. I think it'll be easier to pick up. But I also know that what a good coach does, and I've only talked to Coach Sunseri a little bit, but I can already tell this guy's football IQ is off the charts. It was like he was talking quarterback the way that I was like, yes. It made me pretty excited just to be listening to him. And the way he talks about footwork, and he's so fundamentally sound that I think that you can shrink the playbook and kind of build on it as you go. And I really don't think that has to be a detriment to the team. I think most teams, even back when I played, we didn't always show everything. We kind of built on that as the season progressed. The whole playbook was in. But there's things that you can do to make it easier on a quarterback. And like I said, when you have an athletic quarterback, and think about the quarterbacks. I don't care if you want to go all the way back to Cade McNown. His legs extended plays. And he made a lot of those plays were not what was drawn up. They were ad-libbed. Think about what happened with Brett Hundley.
Yep.
Brett Hundley, beat SC 3 times in a row and had 2 10-win seasons back to back. Brett Hundley was extremely athletic, and it's funny, Brett was built differently, but I would tease Brett about this, and I know some of the players that played with him, he threw nothing but fastballs. When I watch Nico, he throws a lot of fastballs. I want him to, I saw a few touch throws, but like a lot of fastballs. You can improve on that. Be coachable. Listen to the coaches around you, and you can get better at that. But think of all the plays that were extended. DTR, same thing. We got to where we were winning quite a few games. I still go back to his senior year, and a couple of bounces, we might win. He was an athletic quarterback that could extend plays. Think of the SC game. Like, he did so many things with his legs. So when you have a quarterback that's capable of throwing and running, I actually think you can still win a lot of games and be very, very effective without being too complex on offense. And then I think once he starts getting comfortable, I think it just builds. And I really think that the coaching staff are going to have a good plan for this, because you don't want to go into the season with players like not really sure what they're doing. You want to get really, really good at what you plan on doing, and then you can add as you go. Like, again,
right.
If you execute the play, offense always has an advantage. If you can execute the play and do it well, and again, you have an athletic quarterback, so there's a lot of things you can do. So I'm confident that he'll be ready to go. I don't think they'll have it all in by the time it's fall camp. I don't know if it's enough to do that. So they're going to have to be smart about what they do.
Now, Wayne, having said that, kind of taking a step back, we're talking about arguably the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2023. This is a bona fide 5-star. In terms of top-end talent, this is as talented a quarterback at his age as you can have in all of college football. This is the most decorated recruit UCLA has had since Josh Rosen at the quarterback position. And the time that he's coming in with his skill set, how do we think now, Wayne, about this 2025 season? What are reasonable expectations, assuming Nico is the starting quarterback, looking at that schedule, looking at the upgrades we've made to the offensive line, where we are with receiver, where we are with running back, where we are with that defensive front seven? How do we now think about projections for 2025? How do we think about, what's a fair expectation?
That's an unbelievable question. Expectations just got higher. I actually was okay with Joey Aguilar. I actually hope he does well at Tennessee. This has been a weird situation for him. He did nothing wrong. He came in and was going to do it, and the way the world works, he's gone now, and he'll probably go do well for Tennessee. He'll be surrounded by some really good players. I think people sleep on the fact, and when I hear national people that don't really know UCLA, we've talked about it before on the show, how many players have gone on to the NFL for UCLA.
Absolutely.
We've had so much talent come out of this program to where we're ranked pretty high at the number of players that we put out, but we don't win enough games. It's like we're trying to figure out this magic formula of, like, you mentioned Josh Rosen. That was a great get, but what did we get out of it?
Right.
I mean, and that's not a knock on Josh. It's a knock on just as a team, it didn't materialize into what it should have. Like, even though Troy Aikman never beat SC and never won a Pac-10 championship, we still got 2 10-win seasons. It was like 20-4 as a starter at UCLA. And I promise you that those years were fun, and those teams were great. So, like, we can live with that. So when you bring in these elite players, you want to see it turn into something. But when people talk about us, I think they forget how much talent comes through here. They forget about the linebackers that are in the draft this year. They forget about, I go out to practice and they're like, man, we might not drop off at all. We're loaded at linebacker. And there's so many good players that are still there. And then the players we brought in the secondary, like, hey, they might be better than last year. people forget that Gary Smith is practicing.
Right.
That big body in the middle, and Keanu's going to be back. Not to mention a couple other players that we had last year that are really, really good. And so, like, at D-tackle, we're good. I'm still a little questionable at defensive end. I'm not really sure yet. We'll have to see more. Still a little questionable at tight end. I'm positive Hudson Habermill's going to be ready to go. I've talked to him a couple of times, and he's the greatest kid in the world, and he works as hard as you can imagine, and he's huge, by the way. Peterson was good last year. I still think we're just a little thin. Some of the young tight ends look good. They're just a little slight. They look young, right? They need to put on a little bit more weight. The offensive line, I talked to Cortland Ford at practice the other day, and I was so impressed. We have 2 starters back, but we upgraded the other 3 spots, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more depth. But if we can stay healthy and Coach Quan can get him to play as a unit, Berger, we've talked about this before. He's a running back that we kind of thought last year, I'm like, gosh, why isn't this guy getting some more opportunities? And I think as of right now, at least, I would probably figure him being the starter. And I think he's got tons of talent. So it's love the coaches we brought in. I think the key, though, is still going to be Tino. I think the offense that we run, we know what Ikaika is. Ikaika Malloy proved that we've already forgot about Coach Lynn. I'm being honest. Do you ever hear people bring him up anymore?
No.
Not really, right? Because Ikaika did a great job last year.
Exactly. Yep.
The defense was a blast to watch, and if we had any offense at all last year, we'd probably won quite a few more games, even though the schedule was brutal. So I'm not going to get carried away. I'm not going to do anything that people are going to get mad at me right now. But Ohio State's going to be tough just because they're Ohio State, and they've got, good players at every position, and that's on the road. But there's a lot of games that you can win if you have a quarterback who can play at that next level.
Yep.
Who can make you who can remind Bruin fans of some of their favorite Bruin quarterbacks from the past. And I don't care if you go all the way back to Cade. I don't care if you go back to John Shara and any of those guys or any of the quarterbacks from the 80s. You can remember Neuheisel and Ramsey and Stevens and Bono and Jay Schrader. I mean, you can remember some of the Rose Bowl quarterbacks, and you can probably in your brain remember some of the great plays they made when we needed those plays the most, because that's what great quarterbacks do. They make the plays when you need them the most. And if Nico could turn into that guy, add some excitement. You saw it, by the way, the advertisement of, hey, buy your tickets now.
Yep, exactly.
And Nico was a part of it because quarterbacks sell. Now you got a 5-star guy that was a huge recruit that we're bringing back to California. People are going to want to watch them play, and all that stuff helps build the program. And then I'm going to say one more thing, and this is what's so cool about what the coaching staff is doing right now under Deshaun Foster. They really did a good job of bringing in a ton of players of need.
Yep.
Now it's their job to coach them up. Now there's still a few more spots that we need a little bit more depth on, but the offensive line should be much improved. And then not to mention the coaches that they brought in. So I don't know, man. And I'm excited about the receiving corps. I think I don't know if we talked the other day, but I watched Mikey Matthews.
Oh, yeah.
And
Matthews, no doubt.
I saw him make a catch. I didn't make it to Friday Night Lights and Bruin Nation. I am so sorry for this. I was at ACDC at the Rose Bowl, and I took my whole family, and it was the greatest thing.
That's the greatest excuse imaginable.
I know. It's like, when are you going to see these guys again? And I used to listen to ACDC before football games, so I was like, this is a great experience. But I had a little bit of that FOMO. I was like, I'm missing Friday Night Lights. Darrell Price is sending me like, dude, there's a lot of people here. This is fun. And I was going crazy because I wanted to be in 2 places at once.
Sure.
But there's excitement. There was a ton of recruits out there. People are seeing big-name people come in. I mentioned Mikey Matthews. I was about talking to him. He's making electric plays. He's fast. He's energetic. I watch Key on defense, and I'm watching him in interviews, and I'm like, man, this guy has such a great energy about him. We have leaders, it feels like. I couldn't believe John Vaughns. He's like 75 years old. He's still playing football for UCLA. I was shocked by that. But I always wondered what John could be if he wasn't playing baseball anymore. And his baseball time is up.
Yes.
And so he's all football, and he's going to get a spring. And I'm telling you, man, he's been a part of these elite defenses that UCLA's had. That's incredible. So I don't know, man. I just look. We forget Quasi Gilmore is going to take that from freshman to he's going to take that next step, and I've already seen it. Titus, I always forget to mention Mokiao-Atimalala. I'm like, how good is he? There's just so much to be excited about, and I'm not even scratching the surface. That when you throw in an elite quarterback, and if he can take the next step, because remember, Tennessee's defense was pretty awesome. They were pretty awesome.
An incredible running game. Great defense, great running back.
And the offense at time was a little bit stagnant. I've seen that today. But you see the little fundamental things that make me feel like the growth and the athleticism and his fundamentals and his footwork. You see all of that. And when I see that, I'm like, yes, this is a quarterback you want to watch grow and mature because he's got a chance. The ceiling's very high.
No, it makes sense, Wayne. And that's what I think everyone is so excited about, because when you put that high ceiling at the most important position in the sport with some of these returning players like Berger, and you look at the receiving core, you talked about Gilmer, Wayne, you talk about TMA, Matthews, Jaden Wilson, man, he's got some burners, you know, and so
burners. Carter Shaw can run as fast as anybody on the team, and he's healthy.
Absolutely. And then you throw in, Wayne, the significant upgrades at offensive line with Brooks, with Ford, with Armella, and I think that defense, you know, if Gary Smith and Keanu Williams can stay healthy, John Vaughns puts kind of a whole season together now that he's focused on one sport, and that defensive line can just kind of come along and grow and evolve over time. There's a formula here, Wayne, given Tino Sunseri's background. If you can score and if you can sort of average 30 points a game, and defensively, even in that defensive line, if you're not quite elite and you're still kind of growing, but you can be opportunistic. We've seen it in years past, Wayne, not just with UCLA, but other teams. I mean, Washington, the year they made a big run. SC that year with Caleb. You know, these weren't necessarily great defenses per se, but they were super opportunistic. If you can be bend but don't break and opportunistic defensively, and you put up 30 a game offensively, and now, to your point, look, 9-3 kind of gets you in the dance or really close. I mean, there's some really
that's what happened.
Possibilities.
That's what happened at Tennessee, right? They had
exactly.
You see, I just saw a list, and I didn't write it down, of the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten. UCLA just moved into the upper echelon.
Absolutely.
You have a quarterback that's played, and this is the other thing that's awesome. You have a quarterback that's played against Alabama, that's played against Florida, that's played in that stadium in Knoxville. That's always crazy. That's gone through that schedule, and he had to experience playing Ohio State, the eventual national champion, in the first round of the playoffs. And even though they lost, I think it was like 42-17, that experience is incredibly valuable. This is a guy that's been there, done that. And I always say this, it's even like Indiana last year. Indiana was a team that out of nowhere brought in the right players, the right chemistry. And again, all those players that they brought from James Madison weren't like, All-Americans.
Right, exactly.
But they brought in a lot of really good players. If you bring in a lot of really good players and you sprinkle some stars around those really good players, you can win a ton of games. And so, we do this all the time. I'm always optimistic because I can't help myself. I've told everybody last year that I thought our defense wouldn't take as much of a step back as people thought it would, and I don't think it did. And we had elite players, and it was cool what they did. I thought that, we would make some moves, and it was amazing what happened last year. But when I went out and watched practice, and I'm going to go again this Saturday, I was like, my gosh, how did we just kind of, AJ, and I'm going to say his last name wrong, Fuimaono, I've been hearing people they're talking about him being he could be like Jay Tawia by the time he's done. Really, really good defensive tackle. So there's a little bit of depth even there. Okay. So I don't know, man. I keep coming back to the same thing. O-line's going to matter a ton.
Totally.
If this O-line can come together under Coach Kwan, who I also met the other day and was very impressed with. Very, very nice guy. I met the new receivers coach. Unbelievable. Like in the energy these guys have. It feels like it's a much younger staff, but the energy was great. The way they practice. I mean, I was there 2 Saturdays ago, and I walked away going, that was an awesome practice.
Yeah,
and then
for sure.
And I always get nervous because I walked out, and when Coach gets up, Coach Foster was somewhat jovial and joking around. They were joking around about guys getting in the shower before they get in line to eat, which is an important thing, by the way. And it was funny because you can do that when your players are bringing it.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't hey, you guys, we got to tuck in our shirts. We got to do this. We got to do that. There was none of that. This was a really good practice, but now let's take it to the next level. It's like you're never satisfied. You always got to get better. You always got to get better. But it was really cool to see. And like I said, I'm going again this Saturday. And it'll be curious because obviously the quarterback situation is going to be very different. You drop a couple of people. There's still people that are going to stay. We've talked about Luke Duncan before.
Yep.
There are players at UCLA, and I don't know what Luke's going to do. I will root for Luke forever because I really like him, and he's a great young man, and he's busting his butt. But that education from UCLA might matter a lot to some of these kids, and they might be willing to stick it out, and you never know when there's an injury or something else. You get your chance to go in and play, and the next thing you know, they don't want to take you out because you're that good. There's a lot of different things that can happen. So it'll be interesting, but I love the attitude. And like I said, I love there's a lot of pieces that were put together on this team that filled a lot of holes they needed to fill.
No question, Wayne. And to your point, I mean, this conference, the Big Ten Conference, is built from the inside out. This is a trench-heavy conference. The pace of play is different from the Heritage Pac-12. The play selection is different from the Heritage Pac-12. This is a much tougher, more physical, kind of more grinded out style of play. And so to that end, the upgraded offensive line was critical, and that's why everyone is sort of watching where does this evolution of the defensive line go. But Wayne, I don't think it's crazy to say, look, if you look at returning quarterbacks in this conference, you've got Drew Aller at Penn State. You got to believe Ohio State's always going to have kind of a stud at that position. You got Dante Moore at Oregon. You got Jaden Maeva at USC with the Lincoln Riley pedigree. You got Iamaleava. And then you got a bunch of teams that I don't know.
Jordan Childs is not taken the next step yet. I mean, he was a big name that at Michigan State is kind of just hovering. Like,
he's hovering.
They're waiting for him to take the next step. So you're right.
I mean, it's in that top 5 or 6. And frankly, the thing that Iamaleava has over Dante Moore and whoever the starting quarterback at Ohio State is going to be that year of experience. So there's a world here where, at worst, we're talking about a top 6 quarterback in this conference. And at best, we could be talking about the second best quarterback in this conference, depending on how it all nets out. So to say that UCLA has significantly upgraded the quarterback position and is elite at that position relative to everyone else in the conference, I don't think that's a huge statement. I think that's the reality that we're in.
So here's what's awesome about what you're saying, because I don't disagree at all. You got to prove it on the field.
Yep.
But to have a quarterback, like you said, like you can't hide quarterbacks. It's been done. Like it has been. I mean, we've had a couple Super Bowl champion quarterbacks that people would argue were hidden. But I'll even mention, I'll bring up Trent Dilfer and Brad Johnson. Those are 2 very famous ones. They were both still really good quarterbacks. They really were. I mean, Trent Dilfer was drafted really, really high. Brad Johnson was a great college quarterback. They did what their team asked them to do.
Correct.
And I've always felt like if you really want to go down that route, I could say the same thing about Drew Aller. Run the ball, throw to the tight end. Throw to the tight end, run the ball, then maybe go over the top, miss it. Throw to the tight end. I mean, that was what they did. And then they tried to get a little silly sometimes and run some trick plays and stuff, but it really wasn't, I'm going to drop back 35 times a game like Jackson Dart and go through these progressions and be kind of like an NFL-type quarterback. I actually think Drew Aller's got a big upside, But I don't think he fits into all those quarterbacks I mentioned earlier. He's a major step below that as far as a pure passer. I just think I think he can be good, and I hate knocking people because I'm really not trying to do that. But think about the way he throws the ball way less in their system than McSorley did.
Right.
McSorley threw the ball all over the yard. It was all about throwing. So with him, it feels like they hide him a little bit. And by the way, when you have those two running backs, I don't blame you. But I would put Penn State very high. I'm actually having a cramp right now. Who is even going to be the starter for Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean they've got a couple of guys. It's a battle right now, Wayne. I mean it's all 5 stars, but no in-game experience. So between Ohio State and between Oregon and Dante Moore, ironically enough, there's no Dante a little bit, of course, with UCLA,
yes.
But it doesn't feel like it was a full year per se.
Yeah, and let's address that. Dante Moore is, again, and I never root against anybody. There's Dante Moore to me reminds me of there's different types of quarterbacks. Dante Moore and Dylan Raiola are 2 young, very talented 5-star kids coming out of high school that are in the Patrick Mahomes mold. Right. They even have kind of the shorter legs, and they're not real fast, but they're mobile. They can move around, and they're athletic enough, and they throw sidearm, and they do all this different stuff. Neither one of those guys has a gun at all. I don't even think Patrick Mahomes has a gun. I just think he's just unique and amazing, and he's just a winner. He does all this crazy stuff that I call the Patrick Mahomes problem, because most people can't do that. Most people aren't that. And so those quarterbacks, they fight making mistakes, because Patrick Mahomes can do silly stuff when he plays, right? He can try to make the perfect pass, throw it behind the back, throw the ball with his left hand. And when you look at quarterbacks like that, is Dante Moore going to be Bo Nix or Dylan Gabriel? Is he going to be that? Is he going to be? And I think he could be. I think he has tons of talent. I have no idea. But we saw what Raiola went through last year. He was very up and down. UCLA made him look terrible, okay, because we were all over him. And so this is where Dante Moore is going to start this year. Now, he has experience, as you pointed out. He got to sit and watch last year, which, by the way, huge advantage when you're watching Dylan Gabriel, right? You get to watch a quarterback that does things very, very well. And now I think that'll make Dante better. I think it was good that he sat down. But he's still going to go through some of those growing pains. So I'm with you. Like, Nico last year is so valuable. Like I said, I just watched him an hour ago throw an interception against Florida, and it was ugly. He's in the pocket. He waited too long, threw it down the middle, and it was a terrible read. That is a young quarterback thing, though. Young quarterbacks don't see the field, and as you get older, the more you play, the better you start to see the field. You're not just predetermining, I'm going to throw to this guy on this play, and if you have a big arm and the guy's open, everybody goes, oh my gosh, what a great play. But when you really see quarterbacks start to use their eyes and move people, and look one way when they know they're going to throw the other way, those little things that good quarterbacks do, you'll start seeing that from Nico, because he's got all the fundamentals, he's got all the skill. Now he's just got to get more images in his computer so he could start kind of taking those next steps as a quarterback, and I think he'll do that.
No, it makes sense, Wayne. And Wayne, I'll close with this and offer this up. I know you are such a huge program guy, such a huge culture guy. It's all in, and kind of looking at this from the lens of Deshaun Foster building something continuous and sustainable to get UCLA back in terms of football perennially year over year to where we believe they should be and where they're capable of being. And just for the purposes of balanced conversation, are you worried at all about this influx of quarterback talent? And I say it this way, there's some conversation right now, just, spitballing just for healthy debate reasons. We did get Nico on what was considered a discount relative to market value. Let's say he blows up in 2025 and that market value goes way up, and he could be either eligible for the NFL draft because he did redshirt in that 23 year, or is he, in a situation where that price then becomes a little too high for UCLA given the NIL situation. And then similarly with Madden, we're so excited to have this lineage, but Madden was signed with UCLA for 8 months. And then day of, signing day, flips to Arkansas. Now he flips back. Are you worried at all with kind of volatility, instability, where, we're sort of set up for success here, but just from a program level, continuity level perspective, anything you're worried about with this new influx of quarterback talent?
So to answer your question just straight up, yeah, I am. And so I'm going to go all the way back to when I was a freshman coming out of high school. And I'm not going to say anybody's name, but we had a quarterback that came in that was very highly touted in California, like one of the best. There was him and another guy, and it didn't work out. And this guy had a pretty high, highly visible dad. And I played with another guy a few years later that also had a dad that was very visible and very around. And one of those guys flamed out, and the other one, after a couple of years, was a very high draft pick in the NFL. One of them I didn't necessarily enjoy being around, and the other one I enjoyed being around a lot. At the end of the day, these players that move around a lot, and I've said this many, many times on any of the platforms I'm on, I don't like – I played on high school teams where my best friends played, the kids I grew up with, the kids I went to elementary school with, and we won 4 games in 2 years, my junior and senior year. Newbury Park High School deserved better than that. I got the crap knocked out of me on a regular basis, and it was just a downtime for our school. But I was one of the first players to get a full ride scholarship in a long time, and there's been a ton since me. So, I would never change that for anything. Could I have transferred and gone and become a winner somewhere else? Probably, but I think my time at UCLA helped me get through 2 major knee injuries, helped me get through some of the struggles I went through. And I told my wife this the other day. Cade McNown and I are the only 2 conference-winning quarterbacks in almost 4 decades.
Yeah.
They're retiring numbers for people that have done much less than that at their schools. I'm kind of wearing their colors right now, but that stuff's crazy to me. Cordell Stewart's not been retired. That makes no sense. But the idea is that, you can go through and think about, sports parents and you can go through and by the way, sometimes it's overblown and they're not nearly what everybody says they are. They just care about their kids and they're doing a lot of stuff for the right reasons. Sometimes they're such a pain in the butt, they're not worth it. But I'll always go back to this. If the player is the kind of guy that your teammates, and someone told me this isn't how it is anymore. I just talked to someone that's very big and sports media. They play college football. They're like, yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't matter anymore. I'm like, I refuse to believe that. I would like to think that when I talk to my old players that I played with, that when I stepped in the huddle and I had blood dripping down my chin and I'm like, hey, let's go, we're going to score right here, that every single one of those guys wanted to freaking do everything they could to help us get a touchdown because we were buddies. We grew up together. We became grown men together. We went through hell and back together. All the things that we went through made us a team. And now it's tricky because it's kind of like 1 year at a time and let's see what we have next year. And it makes it difficult to build some of that. You have to do it much faster than you used to. So I'll wrap this back around to the quarterback thing. If any quarterback comes in from somewhere else to a school and they can figure out a way, and let's put it this, great leaders can do this, and you can get people to buy into what you're selling quickly, it's very doable. I could keep going on this subject, and I'm really trying because I don't like to talk about people behind their back or anything. But I mean, I played in a college all-star game once where the tight end that went to school with that guy was hanging out with me the whole time because they didn't like each other. There's quarterbacks that are the arrogant me first guys that don't really care about their teammates. And there's quarterbacks that behind the scenes when nobody's looking, they're keeping their players out of trouble. They're keeping their right tackle out of getting in a fight at a frat party. They're doing all the little things behind the scenes that people don't see that good leaders do. that keep the team together. Like, hey, man, you're being stupid. You don't want to do that stuff. Stay away from that. Don't do that. Hey, she said no, dude. Walk away. Like all of that stuff is what quarterbacks in my era, we were supposed to be those guys.
Right.
But I'd been around quarterbacks that guys didn't even know. I've heard stories about quarterbacks at UCLA that didn't always even stay in the team hotel. They would go and then they would leave. And I'm like, come on, man. When you act like you're up here and everybody else is down here, and that's part of the problem with all this money. You got dude driving into the parking lot in a Lamborghini, which, by the way, is a horrible investment, and then everybody else is just pulling up in their regular stuff because, let's be honest, not everybody gets the same amount of money. And let's be honest with this, some of them are going to put it away and do things the right way, and other people are going to flash it and show how amazing they are with all the money they've got. And there's all this stuff going on. You need a quarterback that's a leader. I will die on that hill. You need a quarterback that the players want to play for, that they respect. If you have that, it helps you win football games. And I will never, if someone tries to tell me that's just not how it works anymore, then I don't really understand sports.
No,
because you still need leaders, man. You don't always have to agree with them. You don't always have to like be their best buddy. Like, I'm sure that plenty of Michael Jordan's teammates didn't like him sometimes, but I tell you what, he made everybody around him better. I mean, that's what great players do. They make everybody around him better, and that's what I'm hoping we're going to get. And so all the other nonsense, I don't really care about. When he steps on the field, does he make his teammates better? Is he that guy? And if he is, we're going to win a lot of games.
And we're going to win a lot of games indeed, Wayne. Let's fingers crossed here. We're all very cautiously optimistic that he is that guy, and his brother could be that future guy as well. We could be on the cusp of the Iamaleava dynasty here at UCLA, Wayne. Well, Wayne, such a great conversation, so much to be excited about, and how just awesome is it that UCLA has been front and center in all of this sort of national media and getting folks kind of back to the rightful place here to be one of the epicenters of not just college football on the West Coast, but college football overall. And it's going to be a really fun time indeed.
I know you're trying to wrap it up. But
no, please.
I look at the schedule. I mean, Utah's always Utah, UNLV, New Mexico, Northwestern. I mean, those are all winnable games. Penn State's going to be tough, but we get them here, right?
We get them here.
Right, we get them here. The only other one I see that is like one that you kind of go, okay, is Ohio State.
Right.
So Penn State and Ohio State, if you were really, and I'm not saying we're not going to win those games because I love that UCLA has a history of winning big games like that. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and do the research. UCLA has a great history of knocking off Alabama, of knocking off Ohio State, of knocking off Tennessee. I played in some of those games. Like, they have a great history of that. So I'm not saying those are not winnable, but if you're being like, let's go ahead and figure this one out, those two are the tough ones. But every other game on this list is a winnable football game.
Yes.
Doesn't mean they're all going to happen, but they're winnable. So, who knows?
Who knows, Wayne? I mean, and just to sort of end it on this, and Will and I were talking about this the other day, that, look, at Ohio State, probably going to be a little tough. Penn State at home, we get them at home, but could be a little bit difficult there. Utah might be tricky just because of the lack of spring preparation. That's a tough first game.
It's at home, though, right? Is that one at home?
It's at home.
Yeah, but that matters. I'm telling you, man, that going to Utah is much more difficult than playing Utah at home. So that's no question. That's good. Yes.
No question. But UNLV, New Mexico, Northwestern, we got Michigan State, Nebraska. I mean, it's not like last year's Murderers Row 4 or 5 week stretch. And so if you put, maybe Penn State and Ohio State aside, Wayne, and if you can go, 9-1 in the other games, you're looking at a 9-3 season. If you go 7-3 in the other games, you're looking at a 7-5 season. So I think Nico has brought and elevated. There was conventional wisdom that maybe 5, 6, 7 win type of team, before Nico. Now I think conventional wisdom says, hey, this could be 7, 8, or 9 potentially. So he's really, I think, elevated expectations. And like we talked about, Tennessee case in point, Clemson case in point, 9-3 in one of these two preeminent conferences. gets you knocking on the door, if not into the dance.
I to me, I think that this whole group, this offensive group, needs to live in Wasserman, all summer. You guys, like, listen, I'm sure the whole team listens to the Bruin Bible, and they should. Like, live. You get out, and I don't care if coaches probably can't be there anymore. I don't know if that's even still a rule anymore. I don't know if there are any rules in college football. But the players that get out and practice on their own all summer, all the throwing you do, getting to know each other, getting to know new quarterbacks is so valuable. That the summer you want to go into spring, and all the players that know the system better teach the new quarterbacks what you need to teach them. It's just live there, get a job on campus. Oh, I don't know if players need jobs anymore, but like, so I keep forgetting. I had to stuff envelopes all summer or do something. I always had a job, but man, live in Wasserman. Go out on that field every day and just get better. So that way when fall rolls around, you're way ahead of the game, man. Sacrifice your vacations. It'll be worth it. Yeah, have a great summer because you're going to need it. I think that's going to be really valuable.
No doubt. Well, sacrifice day in and day out. Rome wasn't built in a day, Wayne. It was built brick by brick, and I think we're on the cusp. We're on an inflection point here with UCLA football, and it's so exciting. Wayne, always such a pleasure, my friend, to have you. You're welcome anytime, and hope we can jump back on perhaps next week or the week after you take a look at practice on Saturday. Would be love to sort of get your insights and your take. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that's going to be kind of a lot of folks' first look at Nico in a UCLA uniform. So I'm sure there's going to be tons to talk about in terms of how he sort of responds even from day one. But Wayne, so great to see you as always.
Yep.
And folks, hit that like and subscribe button for this UCLA LAFB channel. As always, you know how we roll. 4's up forever.
Yep.